Okay, so you just had a great call, creative is aligned, the vision is there. Everything is happening. You're gonna make this client's video. But there's one thing you forgot to talk about on this discovery call, and that's how are you getting paid? Hey guys, I'm Dan with Drescher Visuals. Today we're gonna be talking about one of the most important things a lot of freelance filmmakers forget to talk about or simply avoid talking about because they just feel uncomfortable about it. That's getting paid. Look, we all have to get paid for our services. It's part of business. As a freelancer, you need to learn how to stand up for you in order to not get pushed around. Look, there's a lot of scenarios here. You can jump in and tell me this and that, but I'm just gonna give you some simple advice that I've learned over the last 10 years about how to stay healthy with your financial relationship with any client. First things first, we need to stop being afraid of talking about money with our clients. We are professionals, both ends should be. That means that we need to be transparent from the start about the budget and the delivery of those funds for the specific project. Now, what does that mean? It means that once you have a conversation, you need to learn and align with where the finances are with the person's scope of work. I always say, at least give me a range. If someone's having a conversation with me and it's a great cold inquiry from SEO or just simple Instagram outreach, the first thing I talk about after learning the scope of their project is, do you have a range of where you're working at? If they don't have a range and they just are taking blanket quotes, it's typically a little bit of a red flag. I like to always be prepared to say, hey, my team likes to produce videos in this range, and that's because we just have a certain level of quality that we like to maintain. Without those funds, we just can't do it. Does that align with your budget? If they say, oh, I don't think so, then hey, you just saved everyone a lot of time. But if they say, yeah, I think we can make that work, then there might be some opportunity here. So the first thing we need to talk about too is payment terms. What is a payment term? Essentially, a payment term is evaluating when you're going to be paid. Now, that could be upfront, like here's the budget. Does that happen to me? No, but it happens to some people in certain industries, primarily weddings. They get paid up front. They get a deposit to start, and on the day of the wedding, they get paid up front or 2 weeks before. Every industry is different, but what's not different and what's far from being out of line is for asking for a deposit. I personally like to get 50% down. And what does that do? That 50% goes to the cost of doing business. That was my son. I don't know what he threw, but it was something.
Coins.
Yeah. But what I like to do is ask for a deposit. Normally, personally, I go for 50%. And what does that 50% go to? That's the cost of making the video. That's gonna cover my time during pre-production, my team's time during pre-production, my crew, all the costs of the production involved, and then a little bit of a segue into the post-production time. Without that deposit, you could be sitting in limbo with no money for months. Guys, I'm not kidding. I have had projects literally take 90 days to pay. If I hadn't had the deposit, that would have been a really big pull from my cash flow. I don't want that. No one wants that. That's why it's always important to request a deposit. I've worked with some clients that do not accept deposits. Typically they're in the government city official world and they just can't do deposits. And I'm not gonna lie, those projects, they take just as long as the other projects do to complete, and there creates a little bit of tension at the end when you're at 50, 60 days of work and you still haven't gotten paid. So that's why that deposit is a really good way to buffer and gauge the security of the client. Let's be real, if a client can't give you half of the budget, if they have to scramble to pay you, they might not actually have the funds, or their internal operations might not be prepared or ready to handle an external vendor to pay. And that's an entirely different conversation, but that's even more frustrating. Trust me, we've dealt with that too. Now, deposits aren't the only thing we want to talk about when it comes to payment terms. We also want to go into the final deliverables and the expectations once those deliverables are received. When am I gonna get paid? When are you gonna get paid? Now, that really ranges too. Some people are very firm on, you pay upon delivery. That works for certain clients, but with corporate and larger commercial clients, it's just not how it works. Typically, agencies are gonna be paying out net 30 to net 90. I've had some of the biggest names in entertainment pay the slowest. I'm talking net 90, guys, and it's not uncommon and it's not illegal. It's something that you need to be clear about before starting the deal. If you're expecting to get paid on delivery on some massive big job and they pay out net 45, that could really throw your cash flow off. So make sure you know, hey, when this project's done, I'm not getting paid until this amount of time. That way you don't overspend on your pre-production or you don't find yourself in a bind where you don't have any money. It happens to the best of us, it's happened to me, but always say, what are your payment terms? If they don't want to give you their payment terms because they don't have any, tell them yours. I typically say, new clients always pay upon delivery. Once we've created a good workflow, we are in the system and we understand each other and we understand and trust that we're going to be delivering our product on time and being paid on time, I'll gladly adapt to their payment schedule. If they're net 30, I'll give them a product and wait net 30 for the payment. But if it's a new client, I don't have that trust, therefore I need to build that trust by getting the deposit and then getting the payment upon delivery. All right, so we had our discovery call, we got our deposit, we had a great production, we had a great post-production process, we're done, we know our payment terms are net 30. What's gonna happen now? We gotta figure out the way to get paid. And that's something that we sometimes forget. It's like, I mean, you could just like Venmo me, right? No, dude, some massive corporation is not gonna Venmo you. It's not how it works. Typically, I prefer to get paid through ACH. That's a direct deposit, just like if you had a full-time job, they direct deposit, wire the money electronically to your bank account. Typically, ACH is a preferred method of payment for me because the way my bookkeeping software works, it provides the least amount of transaction fees. If a client pays with a card, I typically get stuck with a 3.5 transaction fee, which, hey, if I'm running on a slim margin, that eats at my profit. So I want to avoid that. I do not ever tell a client once they pay with a card that they need to pay me extra for the fee. If the fees are not discussed prior in any type of agreement, I find it a little tacky personally to say, oh, you got to pay me for the fee. I'm very transparent. Hey, gladly we'll take a credit card for your deposit and your final, but just be aware there is a 3.5 fee that you will have to absorb because this project budget is set and includes my rate, includes my cost. This is the rate. If we have to factor in a credit card, that's just gonna be additional funds that you're gonna have to pay. The next form of payment that some clients still do, I mean, personally, I despise checks. I think they're obnoxious. I think they're snail mail. I think they're slow. My checks always get lost or delayed. Maybe that's just my experience, but whenever I'm waiting on a big check, it never comes when I want. And that's why I rarely actually say I accept checks. If it's a new client and they pay with a check, I have to see the check posted on my account before I give them the deliverables. Hopefully this information has helped clarify a few things, but unfortunately, like anything with business, things can change and not everything goes as planned. So what do you do when you don't get paid? Well, there's a few things you can do. First, pause work. If the client is still expecting things from you and they're not paying you on time or they're not paying you when they said they would, pause work. It's simple. They reach out to you and ask why you're not doing something. You say, hey, respectfully, I haven't gotten paid. In the contract, it says this would be due today, and I haven't gotten it. So until I get that payment, we're gonna pause work. If they argue or are outraged by that, they have something wrong internally that they need to resolve. That is not on you, guys. Look, I am telling you, this happens a lot. Sometimes the people that portray themselves as the most wealthiest people online are the absolute worst when it comes to paying. It's so ironic, but it's unfortunately true. If you have a hard time paying your team, you maybe shouldn't have a team. So let's move on to what happens after the pausing work. Well, obviously you refrain from handing off any deliverables. Sounds a little awkward, but sometimes that's the way to do it. You just hold off. You don't give them the files. Now, holding onto the files may not expedite payment initially, but the second the client needs the project, you'll be shocked at how fast you'll get paid. oh, suddenly I have this in my account right now, but it took 3 weeks of holding on to this. It's the day you needed it that you paid me. That's fine. Well, I'm glad I didn't give you this 3 weeks ago. Once again, guys, these are experiences that do happen. If you don't have clients that do this, that's great. But in reality is, if you're growing a business and trying to work with different people in different industries, you're gonna experience one of these or another. Another way you can go about a late payment is adding on late fees. Now, once again, this isn't something that I would really bring up at the moment. I would make sure I've written this into the contract that payments late, certain amount of time past the due date, they're subject to a 10% fee, and then after this amount of time, it goes up to 15%. You can do this, and some corporate clients will pay the fee. I personally don't really use the late fee tactic very often. I normally am able to get my money fast enough, or I've been transparent enough with the payment terms that we don't have to go that route. Also, quick side tips, always do contracts that explain the scope of the work and what you are responsible for the project. And of course, adding in watermarks really goes in great. I love getting a late night text. Is there any way you could remove that watermark? Yeah, as soon as we get that paid, it'll be great. You viewed the QuickBook invoice 43 times. Why can't you just pay? The watermarks are great. What's funny though, I will say this, some people try to actually use, if they don't pay for something and they use your watermark, they'll use the watermark edit. It doesn't happen to me, but I've seen it before. Or it's when someone uses an Audio Jungle song and they don't want to pay, and you hear the Audio Jungle in the background. It honestly, the joke's on them if they go that route. Last but not least, the absolute last thing you can do if you do not get paid is, drum roll, small claims court. Now, I don't recommend small claims court for really anything under $10,000 because there's a straight up initial fee of $2,000 that you're gonna have to deal with. I could be wrong here, but that's the last time I had to deal with this. That was what I looked into. I had a client years ago that was, I think it was 4.5 months past due on their final check. And I looked into the process of small claims court. I also looked into the process of collections. And these are services you want to do only if it's the last resort. And it depends on the amount of money that you're owed. Personally, for me, in my experience, thankfully, I've never experienced the need for this because I've been able to resolve these issues. But if it does come down to that, you can take a client to court. Just make sure you have the right documentation, providing the scope of the job from the start to finish. Anyways, hope this helps, guys. My name's Dan, I'm a producer. I run a production company called Dress Your Visuals. We make a lot of great content. If you are interested in learning more about us, be sure to like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments on this topic or this discussion, feel free to drop it below. I'd love to hear your client experiences or strategies you've learned to get paid on time.